Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel. My name is Bob Van, the IDP man. Today, I'm here to walk you through all the starts and sits from my lineups heading into week 3. We're going to get to that right now. Really quick before I dive in, I do hope you consider subscribing if you are new to the channel. Check out some of the other videos. We are bringing you daily fantasy football content throughout the season. And if you're already subscribed to us, checking out this video, we really appreciate you. And we thank you for coming along for the ride. All that said, let's hop right to it. So diving right in, looking at the very first team, the Rodgers Raiders. We'll look at the quarterback position first. We got Aaron Rodgers. We got Jameis Winston. And then we got on our bench, we have Justin Fields now and Sam Darnold, actually. So now that Justin Field is actually in the mix, I'm going to go ahead and throw him right in. I'm not wild about it. I'm going to throw him in over Jameis Winston, but I just like the odds of a rookie quarterback going against a Cleveland defense as opposed to Jameis Winston, who's kind of a loose cannon going against that New England defense. So that is it for our quarterback room. Then moving on to running backs, you can tell this is the most stellar running back room in all of the land, rocking J.D. McKissick and Nyheim Hines right now. And then as I scroll down to look for other options, there's just not really much. There's Demetric Felton, Tony Jones, Latavius Murray. This was a team that when I drafted them last year, a dynasty team I drafted last year, that I just kind of punted running back. I just didn't really put much emphasis on the position. I did draft Cam Akers, but obviously that hasn't panned out with him being injured. So I was at least hoping to have one really good running back heading into the year and just kind of piecemeal it together with the other pieces I have. But, you know, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. So I think I'm good for that matchup. I do like Demetric Felton, but I'm not ready to start him right away. I'd like to see a little more, although there's a darn good chance that he's just not going to be worth a whole heck of a lot more after this week when OBJ and Jarvis Landry are eventually healthy. But so that running back room for now just kind of is what it is. Like I said, I'm constantly trying to acquire pieces, but you know how running backs go on the open market, and it ain't cheap. Looking at the wide receiver room, I'm a little more a fan of. I got Deontay Johnson here, who's questionable. I'm going to bump him down to the flex position, bump Juju Smith-Schuster right on up. And then I'm going to see what options I have kind of kicking around for Gerald Everett to be put out. This might actually be where I just throw in Demetric Felton. I might throw in Cedric Wilson, who I think might get a little work. Mecole Hardman, in my opinion, is kind of due for a bigger game. So I am going to take my shot on Demetric Felton in that spot. If I knew that, say, Amari Cooper was going to miss time or be on limited reps, I would probably throw in Cedric Wilson. Mecole Hardman, like I said, well, I think he's kind of due. I'm just not ready to bank a weak start on that. Looking at tight end, I have Travis Kelce. Set it, forget it. Don't worry about it. So I will have to just kind of monitor Deontay Johnson. Tyler Boyd is fine. Obviously, I would like to upgrade that if I can. However, in a league this size, being a 12-team league, obviously with 3 wide receiver starters already and then 3 flex spots already, there's just not a lot out there. And, you know, people, like I said, are pretty stingy about moving the pieces they already have. So looking at the defensive side of the ball, I got Jeffrey Simmons, Brian Birds, and Montez Sweat. Pretty solid defensive lineman group there. Looking at my bench options, Jeffrey Simmons would be the only one I'd be really willing to move out. However, I don't have any other options for him. I had Bradley Chubb coming into the year. Obviously, he is on IR now. So that's going to be what it is. I'm not going to look to add anybody. We have a pretty short bench in this league, which doesn't really help, but it is what it is. I'm okay with it. Looking now at the linebacker room, Bobby Wagner, Isaiah Simmons, Zach Cunningham. Zach Cunningham is the only issue piece I think I have here. Last week, ended up sitting the entire first quarter due to disciplinary reasons, which is always kind of a red flag. You know, a linebacker not necessarily getting along with a new regime is just not a great look in my opinion. So that's kind of concerning down the road. But I do have Darius Leonard at linebacker as well as Patrick Queen. So I'm liking the linebacker room, and I'm not going to sit him at this point. You know, he is still a really good talent. And then for what I'd be putting in, Jalen Smith is actually not a bad shout, especially seeing that Micah Parsons is now seeing some time at defensive end, opening Jalen Smith's spot back up. So not a bad opportunity, bad move there, but I'm just going to elect to stick with my boy, Zach Cunningham. Looking at the defensive back room, I'm pretty sold on everybody here. Jesse Bates is off to a kind of slow start this year, but still one of my favorite defenders on that defense alongside Von Bell and behind Logan Wilson. So looking at the other DBs I have to put in play here, I'd be looking at Adrian Phillips, who is fine, Landon Collins, who is fine, Jordan Fuller. I just don't like those guys quite as much as the group that I already have set to start this week. So this lineup is ready to rock for the week. And now we're moving on to my home league. And man, we are coming off a devastating loss last week, losing by 9 points to the highest scoring team. We were the second highest scoring team. So we could have literally faced anybody else in the league and just drew the bad straw this week and got a really, really tough matchup. So looking at quarterback, it's Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan for us. Pretty easy to go with Russell Wilson there, in my opinion. Minnesota has not been a good defense yet. I think that defense, like I've kind of mentioned previously, is just on a downhill slope. They did have a really tough matchup last week, so I will give them that. When we look at the running back position, I'm not really feeling great about Antonio Gibson at this point. But when I look at other options, I'm even less thrilled. Elijah Mitchell, banged up. If he was healthy going into this game, I don't think I'd start him necessarily over Gibson, but I would be much more confident going against the Green Bay defense, which, as everyone should know by now, is a pretty terrible defense. So hopefully he's starting if you need him and you spent all of your fab on him like I did in one of my leagues. But then Miles Sanders, another guy who probably wouldn't be a bad idea. However, I don't think I'm ready to put him over Gibson yet, at least regularly. Kareem Hunt, not wild about that either. James Conner, definitely not. He's more of a depth piece on this team. So I'm going to roll with Antonio Gibson for now. Looking at the wide receiver room now, we got Chris Godwin and Calvin Ridley, along with Allen Robinson and Tyler Lockett. Looking at other wide receivers on the bench, I'm going to find a way to get Terry McLaurin involved. Started him in week 1. Kind of ended up with a dud, sat him in week 2. He ended up going off of my bench. Super unfortunate, but it is the way of the game. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and sit Chris Godwin. And this is definitely going to be a mistake and something I look back on as probably not being the best move, but I really want to get Terry McLaurin in there. The Rams are a solid defense themselves, so I think it's a tough discussion. I think either one is probably fine. If you're picking between the two in your leagues, good luck to you. My track record with Terry McLaurin is not great, but he's somebody I want in my lineup, somebody I like a lot on that team. Looking at George Kittle at tight end, and man, this guy's been missing all year. And my only other real option would be Dallas Goedert. I'm just not going to do it. Going against his namesake of Dallas, I'm just going to roll with George Kittle. It's kind of one of those start your studs situations until they're not studs anymore. So I think I have to imagine that George Kittle will be fine at some point, and if anybody is going to be the game that he blows up against, it's going to be my Packers. Kickers, who cares? Joey Bosa rocking a questionable tag. What a darn surprise. So I'm just going to go ahead and slot him in for Nick Bosa. You know what? The theme of this video is just going to be start 49ers against the Packers. And I think that'll be a pretty safe rule of thumb for you to roll on with in this week. So Nick Bosa at DL, pretty happy with that. Linebacker, Bobby Wagner, Devin White, solid. DBs, Jamal Adams, Jeremy Chin. Jeremy Chin kind of off to a slow start this week as well, but is there anybody I really want to put in for him? Landon Collins would probably be it. However, I think I'm just going to roll with Jeremy Chin. As much as I don't like to play Thursday night players, just seems that Thursday night players, especially defense, just doesn't seem to perform as well. But it could just be that happens to be the case that they're playing on a Thursday and they just played poorly or didn't rack up a ton of points. Looking at the IDP flex spots and Fred Warner, linebacker, San Francisco going against Green Bay. Is he going to stay in there? I think he is. Just because I don't really have anybody to put in for him. I do like Josh Allen against Arizona. I like Brian Burns going against Houston, but it's that whole Thursday night rule again. Also, DE versus linebacker. Usually rather pick the linebacker in that case. Jalen Smith, kind of in his reprise role. Probably not a bad start either. However, I'm just going to stick with Fred Warner this week, off to a better start this year than years past. It does kind of seem that maybe he's going to rack up more in this Sans Robert Salah defensive era. So I'm good to go with that, and that wraps it up for this team. I always like to take a last look and, see if there's anybody I maybe missed that I would want to get involved. I'm super concerned with Brandon Ayuk. If he doesn't pop off this week, the alarm's going to be kind of going off in my head that this dude might just not be a thing this year or at all, which is a shame because he was amazing last year. So it's just hard to believe that, he would just fade away into obscurity after that. Looking at the bench, though, just not a lot. Otherwise, I want to get involved. So that is it for this team. So moving on to the Fields fighters, and finally we get to get Justin Fields in the lineup. We've been, riding either no quarterback or Andy Dalton last week. So We finally get Justin Fields and Matt Ryan together in the Fields Fighters lineup. So the only other quarterbacks I have on this team, I believe, yep, Andy Dalton's the only other quarterback I have. I think Deshaun Watson is, yep, he's on my injured reserve or my out list. So my quarterback situation, it's locked in. That's what it's got to be. So looking at the running back room, Miles Sanders and Kenyon Drake, I don't really think I have another option. I could take the dart throw on Michael Carter. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do that. He got a lot of extra work last week. Even though Kenyon Drake's in a revenge game against Miami, I'm sure it'll be lit. This team got hit hard with running back injuries as well. I had J.K. Dobbins ready to roll on this team. Then I went and traded for Gus Edwards. Ended up trading J.K. Dobbins away. For Darren Waller and some other first-round picks and Kenyon Drake. So needed help now. Didn't really have a great tight end option. So I went ahead and made that move. I do have Kyle Pitts on my bench, but he wasn't really popping off. I wanted to get somebody who this team was kind of ready to compete now. But again, it's that running back room is just kind of seeing issues. So kind of the one thing holding this team back, if you ask me. Looking at the wide receiver group, I have Chris Godwin again, and probably the only player I'd be looking to bench out of this group at all. I got CeeDee Lamb, I got Justin Jefferson, I got AJ Brown. But looking at the bench, Darnell Mooney, Devontae Parker, Michael Pittman, not really feeling any of those options. So I am good to go with Chris Godwin, Lamb, Jefferson, and AJ Brown. Looking at the defense, I got Myles Garrett and Chase Young at the defensive lineman, and I don't really think there's anybody else I want to get involved either. I don't really have a ton of defensive lineman depth on this team. DeForest Buckner probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Chase Young just hasn't really popped off yet this year. He's seeing a lot of double coverage and triple coverage and stuff like that. So it's been the Montez Sweat show on the Washington defensive line in terms of production and statistical value. But then looking at the linebacker group, I got Kenneth Murray, I got Patrick Queen, Josh Allen. And again, this team just doesn't have a ton of other linebacker options either. I'm kind of waiting on JOK to get going, waiting on Zaven Collins to get going. Heck, even waiting on John Davis to get going. I didn't realize I had those 3 rookies on this team. Dang. So I think I am good to go there. Looking at the DBs, Jeremy Chin again is the one kind of sore spot. Maybe see if there's anybody else I want to get in that IDP flex spot over him. That is where I'm going to go ahead and get DeForest Buckner in this game. DTs actually do pretty well in this scoring format in this league. I think he finished as like the DL3 or 4 last year. So DeForest Buckner actually a pretty solid option in this scoring format. Alex Singleton, this might be where I just get Jeremy Chin right back into my lineup. Looking at things, and yeah, I think that's going to be the case. I just don't have a lot of faith in Alex Singleton. However, I do think this is a good matchup for him if you need to start him. It seems that they like to use him more in rushing games and rushing formatted teams. And not saying that I think Dallas will run more than they pass, because they won't. But in that bullheader rushing scheme, I think Singleton could be out on the field more than you think. However, I do think overall, I think it's going to be more of an Eric Wilson game than an Alex Singleton game. Yeah, that is it for the Fields Fighters team, and we are set to move on to another team. So moving on to this next team here, and this is going to be kind of the break from setting normal lineups and going to be kind of a rebuilding strategy talk, and hopefully kind of walk you through the process of in-season rebuilding strategy for me. So last week I decided, after another loss, starting 0-2, which is not a benchmark for deciding to rebuild. Like, you can still have a good team and start 0-2 and go on to win the championship. Like I did that last year in one of my leagues. So it's not undoable. It's not a benchmark saying like, hey, you should definitely start rebuilding. It was just more of a sign of like, just realizing that your team isn't it. And when I looked at this team, last week, in the meantime, from last week to now, I traded away Robert Woods and I traded away Keenan Allen. And I'll discuss what I got from those players in a minute. But outside of those players, this offense is solid, like in young pieces. I had Antonio Gibson, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, TJ Hawkinson, Javonte Williams, Justin Jefferson. My quarterbacks are solid with Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill. But it was the defense that was just like, I'm playing with half a team right now. Like, this defense was just not good. And the pieces out on the wire just weren't anything at this point. Like, I was able to pick up Nick Vigil, which is cool. But like the rest of the linebacker room with JOK not quite being there yet. Alex Singleton seeming to be in a declining role. And then just not having the pieces to really put a good defense together. TJ Watt got hurt. He's probably going to miss several games. He was the best part of my defense. And then looking at the rest of the defense that I have, it's like, Peyton Turner, who I think is going to be solid, showed out last week in place of Marcus Davenport. Josh Uche, who's kind of up and coming, it seems. Corey Littleton ain't it. AJ Johnson ain't it. Chuck Clark ain't it. When it comes to IDP scoring, at least, like Chuck Clark hasn't done anything yet this year. AJ Johnson, same deal. Corey Littleton, I think, is pretty much going to be out of this league in a couple of years at best. Jalen Phillips, not doing anything yet. Derek Barnes, I just added. So when it came to that, I just knew that no matter how good my offense was, my defense just wasn't going to do it for me. So I had already kind of started cultivating first round picks for this season and next year, but I really just decided to say, you know what, I'm going to eat this year. And that doesn't mean I'm just going to go sit all my players. I think that's a really crappy way to tank and just, neglect my team. I'm still going to make moves. I'm still going to entertain trade offers. Everything else, I'm going to set my lineups. And every single week, my team is going to be as competitive as they possibly can be. But when it comes to moving on from aging assets like Robert Woods, like Keenan Allen, both 29-year-old wide receivers and both still have pretty significant value. So in this trade, I traded away Keenan Allen and I traded away Robert Woods. In return, I got Hollywood Brown, a first-round pick for 2022, a first-round pick for 2023, second-round pick for 2022, and a second-round pick for 2023. This is giving me 5 first-round picks to play with in the 2022 draft. So now when it comes to and then I also have 2 seconds, and I think those are both going to be pretty high. Mine is definitely going to be a high pick because this team, like I said, isn't really competing. And then so I'm going to be able to focus and play around the board. And there's going to be a point where, I'm not going to draft defense in the first round of a Superflex draft necessarily. I darn well might, depending on the pieces that are there. But there's going to be a point where I can trade a first round pick from the middle part of the draft. If I've already got a couple of my guys with, hopefully these land in the top 8 picks, and I'm able to walk away with a handful of, maybe a running back, a wide receiver, hopefully ideally a quarterback that naturally it happens to be a pretty messy quarterback class. One of my favorite trade down methods is to trade a first down to a second and gain a first on top next year. I did that in another league. I did that rinse and repeat with 3 different picks in another IDP league, was able to snag great defensive pieces and still gain running backs and wide receivers. And that just basically kept the wheel turning for the incoming talent process. Hopefully have a healthy Darrell Henderson to move. Maybe Jonnu Smith starts doing something. But, establish your cornerstone pieces. For me, that's going to be TJ Watt, probably Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Justin Jefferson, Javonte Williams, TJ Hawkinson, hopefully Hollywood Brown if he keeps up the pace he's on, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Antonio Gibson. And then wild cards are, Elijah Mitchell. Obviously, my quarterbacks are kind of cornerstone pieces. I want to be able to hang on to them just because it's super flex, and they're both pretty safe picks. Both teams have significant money invested in them. Kirk Cousins is the one whose contract I think is set to run out sooner, but I even think he'll latch onto a team. He's a serviceable quarterback. Like, he's not an MVP, but he's a serviceable quarterback. That's kind of my thought process going forward. Like I said, Elijah Mitchell, kind of a wild card. Marquise Brown, kind of a wild card. Maybe Christian Kirk establishes a role as the number 2 in that offense, or maybe he gets picked up by another team like the Packers. We really need another wide receiver. But you can trust that this lineup will be set every single week. Trade offers will be entertained, and the full effort will be put forth with what I have. So getting into the actual lineup, which is pretty much already set itself, I think. Calvin Ridley, TJ Moore, not doing anything with these running backs. The only thing I'll have to watch is if Elijah Mitchell is healthy. But if he's not healthy, honestly, my running back, it's probably going to be Leonard Fournette because he's the only one healthy and we're starting. Maybe I throw Demetric Felton in there as kind of an upside swing. But looking at wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Marquise Brown, I'll have to monitor that questionable tag as well. Let's just go ahead and throw Justin Jefferson right up there. Then we get to the flex spots, Javonte and Marquise Brown. If Marquise Brown can't go, it'll probably be Demetric Felton or even Christian Kirk. Probably wouldn't be a bad shout. I'd probably go Kirk first and then Demetric Felton now that I think about it for more than 2 seconds. So, but for now, he is the guy in the lineup. When it comes to DL, I don't really have anybody else to even throw in besides Peyton Turner. Hopefully he ends up healthy enough to play. All these late questionable tags are very frustrating. When it comes to linebacker, maybe look for somebody for JOK since he's questionable. They're saying Derek Barnes should start seeing some more playing time. For now, I'm just going to have to unfortunately kind of play it by ear and watch that as it goes. Justin Reed, same kind of deal. These 2 DBs are good. Justin Simmons and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Jordan Fuller, Justin Reed, like I said, I'll have to keep an eye on him. I think I would probably throw in Josh Uche if he can't go. TJ Watt, I'm shocked even has a questionable tag with him until he is not questionable, he's probably not going to be my lineup. The way I see it is if he even gets to play, he's probably going to be on limited reps and an as needed basis, probably linked to like when it's a guaranteed passing down, he'll probably be in. But if it's a running play, I doubt you'll see him on the field. Being that it was a groin issue that took him out of a competitive game last week, I don't see him coming back soon. And I like to think that they'll play it pretty safe with him and not risk further injury if they don't have to. But that is it for this team. I kind of hope you enjoyed the kind of changing gears and kind of going through a rebuilding process. And I'll be kind of updating as we go on throughout the season. Like I said, I'll be trying to move those pieces as I can. Maybe try to get a sixth first round pick so that I possess half of the first round draft picks. That's always a good way to kind of be able to control the board. And then moving on to the last team here, the All Stonk Squad, 2-0, rocking hard in the Dynasty Rewind Listener League, Big Boy IDP League. But checking out this team really quick, we got Josh Allen at quarterback. I have Kirk Cousins as another option, but I'm not going to do that to myself. I'm not going to go ahead and sit Josh Allen. That just seems silly. I got Christian McCaffrey going tonight. I have Najee Harris going on Sunday. Looking then at the wide receivers, Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson, pretty solid picks there. Don't think there's anybody else I'm going to throw in. Looking to the flex spot, Juju, Javonte Williams. I think he's going to start to see his role kind of expand probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Might start to kind of take a stranglehold on that position. Just looks like a better back at this point. You know, Melvin Gordon had a good week last week with that 80-yard run. But and then Javonte outshined him greatly this week. They've been splitting reps 50-50. I don't know how much longer that lasts. But I will take Gabe Davis out of the lineup. And I'm going to go ahead and set myself up for heartbreak, and I'm going to go ahead and pick KJ Osborne to slot in. There is a big, way more heated of a debate that I thought there would be with if KJ Osborne is going to be relevant or just going to be this 2-week darling that goes away forever after Justin Jefferson's fully healthy. Like at this point, I don't see like redraft. I wouldn't necessarily be running to the wire to go grab him, but in Dynasty, like why not? Like he's been pretty cheap everywhere I've acquired him, and in a deep league like this is a 16-team league. You know, with up to 5 wide receiver starters. Like that's a deep league, and I just think you could do a heck of a lot worse. It's a big dart throw. Somebody who maybe who knows takes over when Adam Thielen is all said and done and kind of washed up. You know, I just don't see the harm in going and grab the guy. Like I said, in redraft, you know, I don't think there's a ton of upside there, but if he's somebody that I can slot in on my dynasty team on a deep league right now, and he could net me a decent game every week, or even, you know, better than what I'd be throwing in there, you know, why not at this point? Got TJ Hawkinson at the tight end spot. He's the only real viable tight end I think I have on this roster. Yeah, this tight end room is pretty bad. Dan Arnold kicking around, you know, hoping some upside out of him. Donald Parham at some point. It'd be cool if he kick off. That Pharaoh Brown, I'm curious to see what he does. Looking at the defensive side of things, we got Rashawn Gary, who would be the only person I'd probably take out of this lineup. However, there's nobody to really put in a lineup for him. Just kidding. I should be able to get Josh Uche in there, which I'd really much rather do. So slotting in Josh Uche for Rashawn Gary, who I'm just, you know, not thrilled about as a Packer fan at the moment. Hope he starts to show his stuff with Zadarius Smith out for a few weeks. He's definitely going to have all the opportunity in the world. He just needs to actually show it against one of these offensive lines and prove to me and the rest of the Packer Nation that he was not a total draft bust and a waste of a pick. Yet another waste of a pick. So that is it for the defensive lineman room. Moving on to linebackers, you know, Tremaine Edmonds, if this wasn't a deep league, I would find a way to move him. And I still might find a way to move him because I'm so, like, he's so bland. You know, he gets tackles, which is cool. But it's like, dude, go make some plays. Like, get a fumble recovery, force a fumble, get an interception. You know, when you look at it, at the end of the day, when you look at his actual production, like, yes, he has this cool, super safe, boring tackle floor, but he brings nothing else to the table at this point. He's 23, going to be 24 this year. Been in the league for 4 years now. Yeah, he's been in here forever. And to me, like, he's just not a great linebacker. Like I said, if I had anybody else that I could slot in for him, I would. I really don't. Like, on this team, like, there's just no depth. It's a 16-team league with a really deep bench. So, like, there's just not the pieces there to move out. So, somebody I'll probably actively look to move throughout the season, but somebody who's in my lineup now, and I apologize for that tangent. Looking at Isaiah Simmons, love having him on the roster. Roquan Smith, him as well. looking at the defensive back room, and things are not great here either. Look, again, it's deep league. I took over this team as an orphan, so not a lot of great stuff going around. I'm going to throw in Eric Harris. He's been getting decent reps. They don't want to kick it over to the good player and Richie Grant quite yet. So leaving Eric Harris there. Kareem Jackson, another old vet they want to keep ahead of Jamar Johnson, my boy from this last season. Go snag him up on every roster you can, if you can. Then to round out this roster, Kenny Young, Justin Hollins, and let's see, is there anybody I can put in for Hollins? He's been kind of quiet since week 1. It's only been 1 week, but again, not a lot of people I really want to throw in, so I'm just going to roll with the upside with him. Call it a day for this team as well. Now, this video will be going up Friday morning, so you will have the benefit of knowing if my Thursday starts and sits were good picks or not. Thankfully, I didn't have many to go through this week, so hopefully if I get burned and y'all know about it, there's only a handful of them to comment all about. But overall, that is it for the starts and sits this week. Please feel free to drop your starts and sits question in the comments below. I will answer every single one that comes in. As I mentioned before, I do hope you consider subscribing to the channel. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like. Check out the other videos on the channel. I'd really appreciate it. I wish you all luck in week 3, and that is it for me today, y'all. Have a good one.